Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. When I put together my 100 vintage baseball cards for $10,000 list, my intention was not to spend the full $10,000, but to try to save as much money as possible. And so far, I've done a really good job at that. I figured, depending on the grade that I had the card on the list, I could probably pick up a copy in a grade or maybe even two lower than the grade on the list. And I've been able to find copies of those cards that I think have really nice eye appeal, but happen to be in lower grades. There have even been a couple occasions where I find a card in the same grade as I have it on my list, but because they were auctions, I was still able to save a decent amount of money. Now, the card I'm going to show off today, my latest pickup off my 100 card list, is one that I have saved the least amount of money on to date. So you may be saying, well, John, why did you go after that card then, if you knew you weren't going to be saving a lot of money? Well, my method for finding a particular card is this. If a card is a PSA 6, for example, on my list, I'll look for auctions. To this point, I've been just looking at auctions because I figured that may be the best way for me to save money, is to try to go after cards that are on an auction as opposed to a buy it now, because I'm still seeing really high prices for buy it now copies on eBay. And so I'll look for a range. I don't necessarily look for a particular grade. So if a card on my list is in a PSA 6, well, I'm going to sort of filter out the auctions where the card's graded a PSA 7 or higher, or a PSA 3 or lower. So in the case for a 6, my range is a 4 to a 6. Okay? And I'll see what auctions are out there for cards in that numerical grade range. And that was the case for this particular card here. And I happened to find an auction that was for a grade that was the same as what I have on the list. And I really like the overall eye appeal of the card. Now, is this a particularly special card of this player? No. Is it one of my most favorite, or one of the cards I like the best of this particular player? No. But it was one that showed up for auction. I had been looking at this particular card, doing searches as I do for all the cards on my list. And there haven't been a whole lot of auctions or ones where the eye appeal was there. A lot of them were off center. Something about them just didn't click with me. And this one did. I saw it. And as soon as I saw the image of the card, I said, yeah, I want to try to go after this card. And I made sure that after backing in what I would have to pay for shipping and potential tax, I calculated a high bid that I would place, and I would still be just under what I had listed that I would have to pay for that particular grade. And it went up to near my maximum bid, but I ended up winning the card. I'm very happy with it, even though I saved only just a little bit of money on it. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show off card number 22 that I have picked up off of my 100 vintage baseball cards for $10,000 list, the 1964 Topps Yogi Berra. And here it is. Oh, wait a minute. No, this is my ungraded copy of the 64 Topps Yogi Berra. So why am I showing this ungraded copy that's in my collection? That is obviously, as you see here, beat up. You have a crease here. You have two more creases down there. Corners bent down a little bit, rounded corners, ink mark up here. This thing would probably grade nothing higher than a 2 and maybe even a 1. So why am I showing this 64 Topps Yogi Berra that I have ungraded in my collection. Well, this Yogi Berra card holds a special place for me in my collecting history. This was the first real vintage cards for me that I picked up in my collection for the most part. I told the story before. I'll tell it briefly here. It must have been the early 80s. There was a neighborhood friend of mine I was schoolmates with, and from some family member, he had about, I think it was maybe around 40 1964 Topps cards. He really wasn't into collecting, but he showed them to me, and I had some interest in them, and I think I ended up trading some Phillies and or Pittsburgh Steelers maybe cards. I can't remember exactly what I traded for. In my mind, they were cards that I really didn't care too much for, and he agreed, and we did an exchange. And not only did I get this Yogi Berra, but it allowed me to pick up my very first Mickey Mantle card. Now, granted, this one is severely miscut. You can see it's probably an athletics card. I think I figured it out. It's an athletics card at the bottom there, and it's cropped up there. I'm sure there's probably even some creases in the card, and even on the back, it's severely miscut. But these 64 Topps cards hold a special place in my heart in terms of my collecting as a kid. Again, we're talking 1980s, so these were 20, maybe approaching 20-year-old cards, and these were maybe at the time the oldest cards that I had in my collection. So maybe when I saw the PSA 6 copy of the Yogi Berra, maybe it pulled at my heartstrings a little bit. Obviously, it's not my favorite Yogi Berra card, but I think it was one that once I saw it, I really liked the eye appeal of it, and I was like, well, let's see if I can go after it and win it. I'm willing to spend a little bit more money, and rather than pass on it and try to find a copy in, say, a PSA 4 or PSA 5 and save additional money. So again, this was maybe a little bit more of an emotional buy for me off the list. All the other ones have been a little bit more practical, and hey, can I pick up a card with nice eye appeal, but try to save as much money as possible. So I will put these down here, and I will show off the PSA 6 copy. Obviously, a much nicer eye appeal, much better condition than my ungraded copy. Centering is really nice. The border is nice and white. There's very little discoloration to it. Nice, clean, crisp image there of Yogi Berra. I almost wish they had an image of him, showing the Yankees logo on his cap, but it's just a classic Yogi Berra card. He looks, really old. It's toward the end of his career. It's his next to last card. His 65 was his last playing days card with the Mets, and I think it was the most recent Yogi Berra card that I picked up was his 65. And here is the back. Obviously, he is listed as the manager, and so it doesn't have any stats, which is a little interesting. Even if he was a manager, you would think that they would want to put Yogi's statistics up to this point on the back. But no, it's just some information here. It does have some, if you want to pause the video and read it there, it does give some background on his playing history, but it doesn't give like the normal stats that you would see on the back of the card. But yeah, here you go. I was, again, very happy with this copy here. Did I really need it in a PSA 6? No, I probably could have waited and maybe picked up a copy that I would have been, just as happy with in a PSA 4 or 5. But again, once I saw it, and I knew I could, even if I went to my maximum bid, which it went to, I'd still save just a little bit of money on it, and so I could still, justify it. And it is a nicer copy than this one here, which again, I will forever have in my collection, creases and all, because it was one of my first vintage cards in my collection. So let's get into the numbers, as I always do, to give you a sense of what I've paid versus what I thought I'd have to pay for my list and so on. So with this 1964 Topps Yogi Berra, I did have it in a PSA 6 on my list, and I figured that if I get a decent deal on a 6, it would cost me $75. Well, the winning bid plus shipping plus tax, all in, I was at $70. So I only saved $5 on this card, but again, I do not feel bad at all about it. Now, when it comes to actually PSA graded copies, now prices always, of course, change since I put my list together, up or down. The ranges for a particular sale through the VCP's data. Every new sale of a particular card in that grade changes the high and the low and the average for that grade. So I don't know what the range was when I put the list together, but currently for a PSA 6, the lowest recent sale was $49 before shipping and taxes. The average for a PSA 6 is $64, not including shipping and taxes. And on the high end, one recently sold for just under $100, again, before shipping and tax. So for me to be all in for $70, that puts me right around the average price for a PSA 6. And again, I can't remember exactly what the ranges were when I put the list together, but even if it was a similar range, by putting $75, that still meant that, I'd have to look for the right deal, because some cards are selling anywhere from $64 to $100 on the high end for most likely nice eye appeal cards. Typically with vintage, if you're not familiar, or maybe you are, when you find a card with really nice eye appeal, nice centering, you're most likely going to be paying near that higher end or at the top end of a particular range of sales for that grade. The lower end of the sales are probably ones that have a technical grade of 6, maybe nice corners, but is more off center. And for me, my high priority is centering. And so again, I think I did a really good job in finding a nice copy and in a PSA 6, getting it for a nice price, and still able to save, $5. Hey, $5 here, $5 there, it still adds up. So through 22 cards now that I have picked up, I thought I would have to spend $1,970. To date, I've only spent $1,080. So I'm $890 to the good. So I'm still well below the pace of having to spend $10,000 for this card. Now again, there are going to be other ones on this list that I pick up that may fall into this Yogi Berra category, where just because of what's available out there and in the eye appeal that I want for a card, I may not be able to save a lot of money. But I've saved a lot of money so far, so I can afford to, only have a $5 savings here and still overall do pretty good in staying under that $10,000 limit. So we'd love to know what you think about this 1964 Topps Yogi Berra in a PSA 6. Do you think I spent too much on it? I don't know. I would love to know your thoughts on this pickup, card number 22 on my 100 vintage baseball cards for $10,000 list. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.